We're going to start with kind of an overview and then dive into some details. So the first thing you can do is create a continuous learning culture. Well, what do I mean by that? That means to focus on training and education. You can actually teach people, and I'll show you some examples in a minute, that to think this way, to think differently, to understand what are the right questions to ask and how should I and my colleagues be looking at a particular problem together. You can up your recruiting game. There are all kinds of interesting ways to do that. We'll talk about a few in a minute. And then if you have teams that need help or individuals that need help that you have when it comes to critical thinking, you can get inside help and you can get outside help. Identify the critical thinkers in your organization and pair them up. And you can get help from the outside as well. So when you talk about creating a continuous learning culture, critical inquiry comes with mentorship and open exchange of ideas, sometimes hard to hear conflicting points of views. You can do case interviews, and you can have questions in your interviewing that are situational judgment questions that go back to some of the questions that you saw relative to the space photo. As I mentioned, you can blend your teams with fractional staff that reinforce learning by doing. One of the fastest ways to learn when you pair someone up in your organization with who maybe isn't as strong a critical thinker with someone who is they see and watch. This goes back to when we were very little infants and kids. We learned from our parents, we learned from our siblings, we learned from a lot of different places. We're wired for that. And then create something called challenge sessions, where you give your team an opportunity or individuals an opportunity to challenge, to talk about a topic, and you challenge them to come up with what are the areas we need to look at here. So you can analyze real problems, and it's really great to do it when there's no obvious solution. You can make critical thinking part of each day. One really neat kind of approach that we've seen a few times and have done is to start a meeting with a 5-minute what if scenario. Ask the question, here's the situation, what if this happened? What if that happened? And start to talk about the alternatives that you might not uncover immediately. You can do something called post-action reviews. These are not just the outcomes. We've all seen debriefs, and people even used to call them post-mortems and all that kind of stuff. That's fine, but that's focused on outcomes. That's not necessarily focused on decision making. So if you focus on decision making when you have these post-project or post-action reviews, what you're asking are questions like, did we make the right decision? Did we make the right decisions when we needed to make the decisions? And if we made the wrong decisions, did we learn from those decisions? Those are really important questions to get people to think about how to think critically. This third one is really tough, especially today. It's hard for us to listen to people who we disagree with, and they might be fundamental disagreements. And creating a respectful culture, in our case, in our company, our number one value is mutual respect. We listen to people who disagree, but we absolutely demand that they do it respectfully, and we reward them when they challenge those assumptions constructively. You can also create cross-functional problem-solving teams for complex issues. We've seen this work very well where people from different cultures, this is where diversity is huge, right? Because you have different beliefs, different cultures, different understandings, different training. And as I said earlier, when you put a critical thinker who's really good with someone who hasn't quite gotten that yet, it's amazing how they learn.